On this episode of Manji TV, we have some super cool Yellow Speed Racing Coilovers that came with Endlinks, as well as some GK Tech solid steering rack bushings for the Scion FRS. Alright guys, let's discuss these coilovers in depth. We got the front coilover. You can see all the bracketry needed to connect to your knuckle and your Swaybar Endlink. Brake lines and such are all welded in the correct location. This body here twists up and down to adjust your ride height up and down. You've got a bunch of threads up as well as down to adjust your ride height. These are the super lows, so these are designed for cars to be basically slammed to the ground. So this car previously was already slammed. We're just gonna match the ride height. Here we have the second adjuster ring. This is for preload on the spring. You really shouldn't have to adjust that much. Technically, you want just a little bit of twist here out of the spring. If you can't twist the spring, you got too much preload. Now, some people with super low cars like to just squeeze their spring down a whole bunch just to help with the ride height and keep the car off the ground, the little bit of ground clearance that they do have. To each their own, but we don't recommend that. Technically, coilovers are always supposed to be run without barely any preload, or technically zero preload actually. You're supposed to run the correct spring rate for the car, for the weight of the car. That's kind of the gist of the coilover. It's standard entry-level coilover, essentially very similar to something like a BC Racing. You have your top hat here, which swivels. Uniball is very tight, so I can't actually get it to swivel. You got your camber adjustment here on the top. The coilovers do come with new hardware, which is super nice. Anodized, gold rings, attachments, and then a black body here. The adjusters have to go in through the top to adjust left and right. To the right is hard, to the left is soft, plus or minus, traditional kind of stuff there. You also have these nice yellow rubber seals to protect the shock. Here we have the rear body. Same thing, the lower section of the body is to adjust ride height, and the upper section is to adjust your preload. You have the adjuster through the top as well, some new hardware to bolt to the body, and some misalignment spacers here to make sure the spacing is correct between the lower arm. So, on top of the coilovers, what I thought was really nice is they supply these Endlinks, because you will need some new Endlinks, being that these coilovers are super short. I think a lot of brands don't actually send Endlinks with their coilovers, so I think that's a very nice touch. You got 4 adjustment rods or clickers, Allen head screws, whatever you want to call them, to adjust your compression and rebound dampening, as well as you got 2 adjustment tools to adjust your lock rings on your coilovers. Those are very nice, going to come in handy. On top of those, we also have these GK Tech solid steering rack bushings, which you'll see us install next, as well as these coilovers. So yeah, there's not much about these. They're very simple. Billet aluminum machine, anodized black, little slug inserts to keep your steering rack located left to right. So the reason we're doing these coilovers, he was having some issues with the BCs making some noise. So we're hoping these Yellow Speed Racing coilovers last a lot longer. This is our first time trying out these coilovers. We're super excited to see how they ride. We'll give you an in-depth review on kind of how they ride and their overall quality, once we get them installed. So let's go ahead and move forward with the install part of this video and test these bad boys out.
Well, let's go do this motherfucking shit.
We have our lower body spun all the way up as far as we can, so it's in the lowest position possible. They're still slightly longer than the BCs we had, so we'll see how the final ride height is. Hopefully it's acceptable. So let's go ahead and put this bad boy in. The way to do it is kind of tip the lower side down first, get it set in the lower control arm, kind of jiggle it back and forth will help the coilover seat all the way down in the control arm. And then what we're gonna do is pull down on our disc brake just a little bit and pop over our coilover. And now we're gonna feed it up into the holes above and put our nuts on. And that's basically it. And then we'll tighten everything down. We're on the other side now, installing the opposite side coilover. So you'll see, kind of shimmy coilover down into the lower arm. Can be kind of a tight fit. Come on, baby. Of course. No, it doesn't want to work, eh? He's fighting us. All right, guys, so we're going to use a pull stand to lift the lower control arm up, but what we're trying to do is line the stud up with the hole. So you just got to move it back and forth a little bit to get it in the correct location as you jack up. So you'll see right now, we'll move the suspension up. We've got that one lined up. I'm going to go to the other side and make sure the other side's lined up as well. All right, guys, there's something really nice about the FRS. In the trunk here, we have this little flap that folds over and gives us access to our shock bolts on the top side. So we're gonna go ahead and torque these down to 25 foot-pounds. We actually couldn't find the torque, but 25 feels plenty tight. It's probably actually maybe something more like 18 or 20 or 22, but 25 feels really nice on these. So we've gone ahead and torqued both sides. You can see here, this side. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and tip our knuckle up and then we'll throw our bolts in. You also got to make sure to clip your ABS line into this bracket here and bolt your brake line in over here to this bracket. All right, guys, there's two different size bolts. The thicker bolt goes on the top and the thinner one on the bottom, and they go with the nuts on the front side of the coilover. So the bolts go from the back of the car towards the fronts like this. There is also a spacer that comes with the YSR coil to reduce the size of the hole that goes on the front side there. All right, guys, so we just moved the adjuster screws one position over so that we can max out the camber this way and get the most negative camber out of these coilovers. The original coilovers on the car were that way, so we're just going to set them up this way, and then we'll get in alignment and dial it in from there. But that's what we did here. I got to snug these bad boys down. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and install this coilover. You want to make sure that the badge is facing inward, but also if you look at this plate, this slit part is offset to one side more. You want to make sure the side that will allow you to get more camber is facing inward. All right, guys, here we have the Yellow Speed Racing supplied Swaybar Endlinks. I've got these adjusted to be as short as possible, right down to the end stops. Let's go ahead and install this bad boy. So we're gonna have to lift our Swaybar because nothing's holding it up currently at the moment. We're gonna tip that back. There it is, installed. We just gotta throw some nuts on it. We're gonna use their supplied Teflon nuts and torque these bad boys down to spec.
Like this.
Since the bolt and nut size is the same in the front, we're just gonna go ahead and try and do the same torque, which feels really good. So torque all these to 25 foot-pounds. All right, guys, we're gonna torque the front knuckle to coilover bolts. They're 113 foot-pounds. All right, guys, we're gonna torque the lower bolt on the coilover here to 60 foot-pounds on the rear of the car. All right, guys, we're gonna torque the lower bolt for the rear coilover to 60 foot-pounds. So we've already gone ahead and removed the bushing from the factory rack and pinion. The best way to do this, you can do it still on the car, use a torch, get the rubber section of the bushing nice and warm by heating up the center slug, and then use a screwdriver or a punch or whatever, and just kind of, once you have the bolts obviously out, you can use a pry bar to pull this back just a little bit. You can tap them out through the back. So that's how we did it. Then we wiped it down all nice and got it all clean. And now we're gonna go ahead and install our new GK Tech solid bushings. They basically just push in. You can use like a mallet or something and just tap them in. That one's been a little bit difficult. Freezing them beforehand also does help, but we're just doing it cold or room temperature here. So we're gonna go ahead and get this back one position, and then I'm just gonna show you. We're just gonna tap it in nice. It really doesn't take much. And they seat nice. And that's even using a regular hammer, it didn't even mar it or anything. So it doesn't take very much. They're both seated now. So we'll go ahead and get the bolts in it, get it torqued down to spec, and then get this car back on the road. So we got ahead and tightened the nuts here on our Swaybar Endlinks. Couldn't find the torque on those, so we just did them good and tight. We also, same on these, it's pretty hard to torque these anyways, but we tightened our jam nuts here on our adjustment. We went about 3 revolutions out from fully shortened. We could have done fully short, but I was worried the clearance would be too close here, so I spun them down a little bit to get a little more room from here at the bottom of the coilover, as well as in between the frame here and the sway bar. So this is kind of the final product. Everything's been torqued. We also made sure to check our lock rings here and lock them down and make sure the preload side to side was the same and the ride height side to side was the same. So now that we've gone ahead and done that, everything's locked in, we're ready for a test drive. Let's go ahead and get these wheels on and get this car down on the ground and check the final ride height and take her for a test drive. All right, guys, I was able to find the torque for these. Actually, it is 37 foot-pounds for your Swaybar Endlink nuts. All right, guys, the torque for our steering gear or steering rack and pinion bolts is 90 foot-pounds. We're gonna go ahead and torque these up to 90. If you guys were wondering how many clicks there were of adjustment, there's 32 clicks, so 32. All right, guys, so first opinion of the coilovers, I've actually taken it for a pretty good little spin around the block, and car rides a lot better than it did previously. Now, we were comparing it to some blown out BC coilovers, but these YSRs actually seem to ride very well. We've got them basically in the metal setting, so there's 32 clicks. We've got them at 16, so we've got them right in the middle. They're not too soft. They definitely could probably be a little stiffer, so this was my car, I'm gonna let the owner decide what he wants to do with it. But if this was my car, I'd probably click them up a little bit more, maybe up to like 20-ish or so settings. Clicks, we probably raised the car maybe a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch. It's making all the difference going in and out of driveways and like in and out of the shop where it used to scrape, now it doesn't. So that's nice. Turning around, big reason why we changed the coilovers was the coilovers previously were making some creaking and weird noises when turning, so all that stuff's gone. Overall, car feels really good. You know, high-speed bumps. There's some pretty gnarly stuff out here. We'll go hit it. We'll show you guys what that's like. All right, guys, this bridge is pretty gnarly. So dropping onto the bridge, pretty nice and smooth. Coming off the bridge, soaked it up really well. You hear the tires in the inner fender well kind of smacking the inner fender because it's so low, but other than that, the car is actually very smooth. Let's do a little J-turn here. Hold on tight. You ready? Little drifty. Car's got no power, but definitely a driftable chassis. If this thing just had even like 50 or 100 more horsepower, it'd be so fun. But we're gonna hit this bridge right now, high speed. We're going 60 miles an hour. Oh yeah, right here's the big one. Oh yeah. Other than the wheels hitting the inner fender, it's actually really nice. It actually rides a lot better than before. So for the money, these YSR coilovers are worth their weight in gold. The BC coilover I think comes in around 1,200 bucks, and these YSRs are listing around I think 1,000. And if you hit us up, we could probably get you a few bucks off that. But for the price, they're quite a bit better than the BC just from this initial drive. Yeah. One thing to note, the steering is much tighter and more precise. And especially like right there, I went through a right-hand turn with a dip. The car doesn't kind of wander like it used to, which was some play in the steering and suspension. Being that it's a lot tighter now, definitely the car is more planted and goes where you put it. So the GK Tech solid steering rack bushings are a definite must upgrade in my opinion. Anytime you can get rid of bushings or rubber, it's always a pleasure. It's always an upgrade. All right guys, that's gonna wrap up our install of these YSR coilovers and these GK Tech solid steering rack bushings. If you like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. We're gonna be linking the link to these coilovers as well as just the overall YSR catalog for you guys to enjoy. If you need anything, hit us up. We are a dealer for YSR. Super stoked with how the car came out. Ride height, super sick, super aggressive. We'll be sure to give you guys a long-term quality video.